Hello, Cameron and Cameron.
Hey everybody, this is Cameron, and I am here with Camcorder Camerin. That's right, it's two Camerons for the price of one today. We are discussing the Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me missing pieces. Camcorder Camerin, how are you? Or should I just call you Cam?
I've had friends that just from meeting other people, they're like, I thought your name was Cam, because so many people call me that. I'm good. I'm so excited to talk about everything you guys have missed in Fire Walk with Me.
So there is so much to cover with this topic. It's we were talking before we started recording. It is overwhelming. We're going to do our best to get through it all. But I guess the best way to do this is to start at the beginning, and that is when the film Fire Walk with Me was being made in 1991. The majority of the cast came back to make this huge film, and right away we started hearing that the film was being edited severely to the point where it was just going to focus primarily on the Laura Palmer story. And that was fine because obviously she was the unknown factor in this, but I don't think a lot of people were quite prepared for when the film came out, just how much it was going to be brought down to primarily Laura, Donna, Bobby James, and her parents. Everybody else pretty much got cut out. So right away, there were rumors about what these deleted scenes or later missing pieces would be. In 1992-93, you could mail away through a script company to get the script for Fire Walk with Me, and that was our first sort of exposure to what some of the deleted scenes were going to be if we ever saw them. And that was really exciting. It was also very frustrating because we could see from reading the script how huge the story actually was, because the script is even called Fire Walk with Me, Teresa Banks, and The Last 7 Days of Laura Palmer. And it took nearly 20 years before we would finally see them. And when that day came, when that Blu-ray dropped in 2014, it was amazing. It was 90 minutes of footage of Twin Peaks that we had never seen. Basically, another Twin Peaks movie. We had no idea that there was going to be a season 3. So we thought, we sat down, that this was going to be the last footage we were going to see. And it was going to be capturing these actors playing these characters in a moment of time that had happened over 2 decades ago.
My first thoughts on Fire Walk with Me was I immediately absolutely loved it. It's still to this day my favorite David Lynch movie of all time. It really holds up, and I was surprised whenever I was doing research for my Fire Walk with Me video. I was surprised that it was hated at the time of its release by a lot of critics. I can understand, of course, where people are coming from because it's really jarring to go from like the sugar-coated town of Twin Peaks with the dark underbelly and all our lovable cast of characters to this like horror movie that's pretty much about a young girl suffering the whole time. But I love horror movies. If you guys don't know that about me, it's my favorite genre of movie. So it's just a perfect movie in my eyes.
There was a newspaper at the time that called it David Lynch's Friday the 13th. When I first saw it, I really liked the film. I wasn't in love with it, but I really liked it. I think it's because I knew how much had been cut out. I didn't know quite what was cut out, but I could tell that there was a lot. And if you go by the script, you can see that the Laura scenes are supposed to lead into other sequences with different characters and then come back to Laura. So when you cut out all those other scenes and just have it be Laura's scene after Laura's scene after Laura's scene, you can see how why the film came out so intense. But obviously they had a 135-minute runtime that they could not go past. Some people have said in retrospect that maybe he should have just cut out all the Teresa Banks stuff at the beginning to put more of the Laura story in there, because there's a lot of great scenes with Jacoby and other characters that we all wanted to see as well. But that Teresa Banks sequence is really interesting, and it has some of my favorite Badalamenti music cues. So I don't want to give that
Yeah.
up. Yeah, there were a lot of people who didn't like it at the time. Now, it is a film that I feel like grows on you, and I also feel like the missing pieces coming out definitely helped the movie even more, because
It gave the people what they wanted.
it gave the people what they wanted, but it also helps flesh out the film even more, and it really, especially when you watch the fan edit that we've seen, you can see what a complete entertainment that David Lynch was making.
Yeah, for context for viewers, we'll say the fan edit, somebody took all the missing pieces and put them in order in the original Fire Walk with Me movie, going by the order it would have gone by in the script. Right?
Yeah, right. With the exception of the Phillip Jeffries section.
Yes, that was reordered differently. And that the runtime on this is 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's close
around
to
that
3.5
time.
hours.
It's long. It really is. Maybe if it was a mini series, but sitting there, I mean, I can get down with a long movie. Like, I love the new Dune movies, and those are so long. But I think overall, there are a lot of missing pieces I would keep, but there are far more that I just wouldn't keep, because I feel like Twin Peaks is the last 7 days of Laura Palmer's life, and there are so many side characters in Twin Peaks, especially near the end of the film, whenever the climax is ramping up. It just kind of stalls the movie's momentum a lot of times.
Oh, I am not going to disagree with you. I'm just saying that I love seeing it all together.
Oh, as a fangirl, yes, absolutely. I love it. I love getting to see these scenes.
When I first saw the missing pieces, I liked them a lot. There were some that I loved tremendously, and then there were other ones where I thought, well, that's nice to see, but I can see why they cut it out. But then as the years go by and you watch them and you rewatch them, man, if they had just taken out 2 seconds out of 5 scenes, they could have had this other moment in there. Like, to me, I feel like the Dr. Jacoby scene, calling her on the phone, is like kind of essential.
Okay. We'll go by it scene by scene, and
Right.
we'll say if we would have kept it maybe in our cut.
Well, the first thing we see in the missing pieces is Laura's picture in the school. That is the picture that the Palmers had at their house. And the picture that was in the school was a different one. But in the movie, it's flipped.
Both pictures are her smiling in her homecoming tiara. What's the difference between them?
It's just her. It's her pose. It's the way she's turned her head. And at first I thought, wow, that's kind of a big continuity error, until you start going through the film and you start going through, the missing pieces and the script, and you realize just how much is flipped from the show and into the movie, that you have to start thinking it's got to be on purpose, because all of the Deer Meadow stuff is the flip opposite of Twin Peaks. It's almost alluding to the fact that Cooper going back and saving Laura, there's already sort of ramifications of a time loop happening, which obviously culminates with Annie showing up in Laura's bed. You know how they always talk about in time travel, like, well, if someone went back and did this, there would be
butterfly effect.
Right. And I almost think that's what we're seeing in Fire Walk with Me, is the early signs of that butterfly effect.
I love that. See, me as a viewer, I did not even realize they were 2 different photos. The one in the house and the one in the school display. That's crazy.
All right. So the first thing we see is Sam Stanley and Agent Chet Desmond exiting the morgue after performing the autopsy on Teresa Banks. And basically, they are just kind of staying there. It's sort of an extension of what we already see in the movie. It is, I believe, an alternate take. And it basically just is a little bit more to kind of get them to Hap's Diner. I mean, it's nice to see, but I could kind of take it or leave it with this, because there's not really much to it. It's just a few extra seconds. What was your vibe on it?
Yeah, it's a very brief scene. Definitely doesn't need to be in the movie. And it doesn't even feel like a complete missing piece, because it's like they just kept the part they edit out of the scene instead of the scene as a whole.
All right, the next one is the extended conversation between Sam and Chet Desmond talking to Jack inside of Hap's diner, and then he tells them to go talk to Irene at the counter.
Jack's office is reminiscent of the convenience store with its grimy black walls and zapping electricity. If you read into it, it could be evidence that Chet is unknowingly speaking to some possessed people. They seem to want to lay low so they don't act too odd or stiff the way we see others do later on. The oddest thing that Jack says is, "Now her name is Irene, and it's night. Don't take it any further than that." Is this some kind of marital joke I'm not getting, or is it some remains from the odd way of speaking in the other place?
It's a very interesting point, considering that there is somebody sitting on the ground that looks very much like a woodsman.
Yes, it's kind of one of those scenes where I don't know if it's meant to be like coincidentally similar to the Black Lodge, or if maybe these are more like entities from the Black Lodge.
There is something reminiscent of what we see in The Return when Mr. C goes into above the convenience store and is being taken to go see Phillip Jeffries. So this is sort of another extension of a scene that was in the theatrical cut. It was truncated down. That sometimes I wonder why they even included any of it in the film and didn't just begin it with them walking to the counter. Unless David Lynch really wanted to illustrate the point that I think you're hinting at, where there are allusions to the lodge and the above the convenience store aspect of it.
Well, my thoughts on this scene, I agree with you that they cut a little bit too much of it out of the movie to where it's a little bit forgettable, and you're like, what's going on here? I always thought when I watched the movie, I didn't realize this was his office because it's so brief. It seemed like to me some kind of alleyway they were walking by to enter the diner, especially with the gray walls. I thought it was like the outside of a concrete building.
See, I always took it as them walking in the front door, and this is like the little lobby section where you wait to be told you have a seat.
I would keep the missing piece because it adds context to the scene, but I do like how creepy it is in the final cut of the movie. They make it super sinister.
Yeah, I do think it still works in the theatrical cut. My point is when you start truncating a scene that much,
Why is it there?
Why is it there? But
Yes.
I think it's because it's to illustrate the point you are saying, that I think David Lynch wanted us to have a feeling of, especially in this Teresa Banks section, a feeling that there is a sense of the lodge kind of permeating this area too.
Yeah, and you get a sense that Chet Desmond is in danger. Like he's in over his head. He knows about the Blue Rose stuff, but because he's not as intuitive as Cooper, I wonder like if he really knows everything he's getting himself into here.
Dale Cooper, we know that he would have survived this to get to Twin Peaks. So it's almost like the Teresa Banks section would have made Cooper's character stronger in terms of like learning about this world. But Chet Desmond it's kind of leading him further down the rabbit hole in a negative way. It's almost like him and Laura are parallel. They're both like free falling through this whole film. And whereas the other way, it would have been Cooper ascending as Laura falls. It's two entirely different movies.
When I learned that fact about how Chet was supposed to be Cooper, it totally made sense. But at this point, I really do think of them as two different characters, especially with Chris Isaac's performance. Like he really is giving it his like noir detective, suave performance. And it's really convincing to me. I almost like forgot about the fact that it was supposed to be Cooper in the first place.
And he also plays it sort of otherworldly. I mean, when he walks up to the deputy before he grabs his nose, and the lighting is so specific on his eyes that I thought, is Chris Isaac like an alien? Obviously, as far as we know, he's not. The character of Chet Desmond, Chris Isaac may himself be an alien because he's just hasn't aged in 30 years. But he's a tremendous talent, and you can see why Lynch wanted to work with him, because he obviously provided music for Wild at Heart. and he also played an FBI agent a year before in The Silence of the Lambs. So it's kind of
He's
cool.
great.
So Good Morning Irene is with them walking out of the diner as the sun rises, and they basically say bye to Irene as they get into their car. And
They're
there's a
like,
moment.
"Whoa, it's morning! Thank God." They've been up all night.
And then you hear some electricity coming from the power lines. This is one of those scenes where I always think to myself, when they were setting up the camera and getting the actors ready, don't the filmmakers just kind of have an idea that this scene is never going to make it into the movie? Because it's like there's really no point to the scene except just to kind of give a sort of epilogue to this other moment. I don't know. David Lynch seemed like one of those filmmakers that even if he knew he was going to cut it, he filmed it anyway, just to kind of say they went through the process of shooting everything. But when you watch this scene, it's clear in no way was the scene ever going to make it into any cut. I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree that this was never going to make it into the movie. I also maybe imagine that they film stuff even if they know it will have to get cut down, because it gives them more freedom in the editing room to like play around. And this could be a moment that maybe we get in a flashback later on, or we see it transparent over some trees blowing in the wind. Like, you never know what they're going to do when they're editing a movie.
You could see Sam talking to Cooper about it and maybe getting a transparent flashback over donuts of them getting in the car
Yeah.
or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I can see it from that point of view. But if to just have it right after the Haps Diner scene, it's like it never would have made that cut.
Yes. To me, I love it because I like getting to see Irene off duty having the same attitude as she struts to her car. But besides that, it's not needed.
So the next one is the legendary boxing scene between Chet Desmond and the sheriff. Now, we had seen still photos of this for years. Never thought we'd ever see it. Apparently, David Lynch himself did not want to include this scene in the missing pieces. But there is a guy that goes by the name Dugpa online, and he was helping to coordinate the missing pieces being released. And he told David to his face, you have to include this because so many people have been waiting to see this. And so David thought about it and included it. So,
Oh my
and
gosh.
considering it's your favorite of these scenes,
Thank God for him.
so let's walk through this. Why is this one of your favorite scenes?
Yes. Everything about it is just hilarious to me. And to me, this is one of the Twin Peaksy scenes, that I wouldn't mind being in the cut. In general, my perspective is like, if something's not related to Laura, I don't really care about the missing pieces as much. But this one, it just gives me that old love of like watching Twin Peaks. Where did they film this?
They filmed this. So they filmed this in Olali State Park,
Okay.
which is where a number of Twin Peaks locations can be found. But this whole sequence, the morgue and the sheriff's station in the Teresa Banks section, is the ranger house at the park. So right next to where they shot the boxing scene, if you go about 50 yards, that is where Cooper saves Laura in season 3.
Oh my gosh.
It's all right there. So I'm going to differ with you a little bit on this. I like the scene. I think it's a little too long.
Oh my God.
When they start getting to the boxing part, all of a sudden it becomes like a Rocky movie for a second.
Yes.
I can't imagine this scene with Kyle MacLachlan. I don't think it would have worked at all. The fact that Chris Isaak was a boxer helps tremendously. And I can see why they cut it out, but I also think it kind of needed to be in the movie a little bit, because otherwise we're just left hanging with the sheriff. Like, there's just no resolution to that whole tension between them.
Yes.
We could have had at least one punch and then cut to the body being loaded into the morgue truck.
So in the movie, we see whenever Chet is talking to the cop, the sheriff, Officer Cable, I think is his name. When he's leaving, he sees a framed picture of Cable bending the steel rod. And I've always liked that part in the movie. So this missing piece is like the extended version of that. Everything about this scene is pure perfection. From it starting with Cable bending that damn rod like he does in the framed photo, then proceeding to fight so dirty. The FBI van driver in the background, I think the actor is Stephen Beard. He's giving the performance of a lifetime. I love how he has his hands clasped in front of him like Jeremy Allen White, politely holding back a smile and nodding his head at each punch Chet lands. And of course, it's great to see Chris Isaak showing off what his muscles are made for in his undershirt. Just when you think the scene can't get any better, Chet dismissively goes over to bend a steel rod like it's nothing over a now unconscious Cable. The only critique I have of this scene is the choice in music. It's kind of like just like the do 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 like drums that they have. I didn't think it fit the energy of the scene. They could use something a little bit more up-tempo and snazzy. But overall, this may very well be my favorite deleted scene. It gives you a feeling of that classic Twin Peaks sense of humor, but this time with our new cast of characters. To me, it's reminiscent of the season 2 premiere when Andy hit himself in the head with the plank. And I'm a big fan of slapstick humor in David Lynch movies.
One of the criticisms at the time was that Fire Walk with Me didn't have enough humor to it. Obviously, they weren't calling for humor in the Laura Palmer scenes per se, but they just meant tonally. So I think having this would have given a little extra check mark to that.
Yeah, and it, to me, is acceptable because it's early on in the movie. It's not later on whenever we're just trying to follow what happens with Laura.
The next one is my candidate for the absolute worst scene in the entire history of Twin Peaks. And that is the Cooper stands in the doorway of the office and talks to Diane, unseen, unheard. I have a feeling this is not the way it would have appeared in the film. Probably would have been different angles. Tonally, it goes so far over the top. Now, I know some people would say that Cooper is egotistical, but this is beyond time-wise. This is supposed to be after Caroline's death. Does this look like Cooper post Wyndham Earl, Caroline? Would he be like acting like a fool like that? I don't know. Almost unwatchable.
Oh my god. Yeah, I can see your points about it definitely like not seeming in line with his character, especially whenever you put him in time. At that point in time, it doesn't make sense. But to me, it's pure gold. I love it. I wouldn't put it in my cut of the movie. It wouldn't make it. But as a fan, I love watching this every time. So it's hilarious that it gives you that reaction. I love the way McLaughlin says yes, another triumph for the dashing Agent Cooper. Like the way he delivers that line is so good. And he blows her a big kiss before walking away. And it's funny for them to tease us with him talking to Diane and talking about how beautiful she is and complimenting her, but we're never actually seeing her still. I like that they're kind of teasing us with that. And it's kind of interesting because you get a feeling that they're like each other's work flirt, which I never really picked up on whenever he's doing his voice memos to her.
That's what I'm saying. It's turned up to 11 here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but his big goofy smile, it's just like undeniably a good scene for it.
And that's supposed to lead into the Phillip Jeffries section. I think it's in the script where it's alluding to Diane talking back because he pauses. And we weren't supposed to understand what she said. So I actually did a little video on my channel where I cut in the Charlie Brown teacher voice.
Oh my god, that's so good.
And it actually fits rather well. It doesn't fit into any continuity in terms of Cooper's character at all in anything of the series. So it's not season 1 Cooper, it's not season 2 Cooper, it's definitely not season 3 Cooper, even as Dougie. So I mean, maybe if he was playing it that way in that whole Pittsburgh FBI section, I could understand it, but it comes out of nowhere.
Now that we're talking about it, it does remind me of the way he performs whenever he's in Twin Peaks and he's like falling in love with the small town vibe and the cherry pie and the community there. Like that's the way he behaves in that environment because he loves the smell of the Douglas firs. But you're right, like seeing him in the Philadelphia office, it's like, this isn't how you act here.
Well, and also the way he kind of puffs himself up as being like alpha male. I'm like, I just don't believe that as Dale Cooper because he never seemed that way. Going back to the box scene with Chet Desmond, because that was originally Cooper in the script, that explains why in the pilot he says to Truman in the hallway, hey, just want you to know when the FBI gets called in, we're in charge. Sometimes local law enforcement has an issue with that. He's basically saying, in retrospect, don't cross me or I'll box you.
Wow.
He never once raises his fist at anybody. It's Truman that punches
Yeah.
Alfred out, right? All right, the next one is Stanley's apartment. And this is where after Chet Desmond has disappeared, Cooper goes to talk to Sam Stanley. And I am shocked that this scene got cut out of the film.
Wow.
Completely. One, keep in mind, this is 92, and you have Kyle MacLachlan and Kiefer Sutherland together in a scene, right? They were so big in that moment of time, and you're going to cut this moment out. It also allows Cooper to have an interaction with Sam for him to say in the pilot about don't go to Sam. We also, in retrospect, from season 3, you see the white liquid that he's churning, which is gonna come into play in the woods with where they find Naito. So there's a lot of really cool things about the scene. I love him looking through Sam's machine. One thing I've noticed in the missing pieces is some of the stuff that David Lynch cut out is some of the most cinematic moments of Fire Walk with Me. What did you think of the Sam and Cooper scene?
I like it. I do. It's definitely not my favorite, but I enjoy it a lot. I noticed when I was reading the script that Sam has this little catchphrase. He says, I'm Sam Stanley if you ever need me. It's something he repeats often at odd times. He's an odd character, and it's definitely played a lot more up in the script than it is in the movie. But this is the one time we actually get to see him in the movie say, I'm Sam Stanley if you ever need me. The one and only time he says it gets cut out.
I see a lot of people online referring to certain characters in Twin Peaks as being autism coded.
Yes, he is absolutely autism coded.
I agree with you. I think in looking at the film now, especially with him sitting in the chair in the sheriff's station, doing the counting of how much everything's worth.
He's on the spectrum, it seems like, and it is a lot more clear in the script. What I thought was a science experiment, I didn't put 2 and 2 together with the entrance having that milky substance.
I don't know if it's the same stuff, obviously, but I think it's when you watch it now as a big whole, I think it is a sort of an early sign of things to come.
Yeah, and it is just also like in David's repertoire of like imagery and art. It reminds me a lot of his earlier work, especially that movie The Grandmother. Something about the milky water with the stringy white crystals on the side reminds me of the visuals from that. And I love how it's never explained. Like there's just this machine whirring constantly throughout the scene and they don't really address it.
And the look that Cooper gives to it, there's no curiosity there. It's almost like disdain, when he looks down at it.
Sam Stanley is very proud of the fact that he cracked the Whitman case. And there's so many times where he'll bring it up, especially that machine where they used to look at the letters from underneath the fingernails. He's like, this is the machine I used to crack the Whitman case. And there's a scene where he starts to get into that and Cooper cuts him off because he's like, I know the story. I don't need to hear it again.
All right. The next one is one of the biggest. It's the Phillip Jeffries in Buenos Aires and above the convenience store set piece. In the script, Laura Palmer is walking to Donna's house and it is 1989. It then cuts for the Phillip Jeffries sequence. And then after that, it cuts back to Laura picking up Donna and they walk to school. So when it came time for the theatrical cut, David Lynch moved the whole Phillip Jeffries sequence up a year into 1988. So they had to make some cuts because of Phillip Jeffries referring to 1989. In the finished film, we go to Pittsburgh in 88, and then it cuts 1 year later to Laura Palmer. However, in season 3, Phillip Jeffries mentions 1989. So it's almost like they forgot that David Lynch moved it up a year. But that's okay, in my opinion, because Phillip Jeffries is a person out of time anyway. But that's where the confusion is. This is a huge sequence that got cut down to like a minute and a half.
It's kind of like 4 or 5 scenes mashed together.
So it begins with a hotel in Buenos Aires. This scene reminds me a lot of something you would have seen in Wild at Heart with the dancers.
Yeah, and the coloring especially.
The camera pans over, and right away you can see why they cut out this scene, because if you look in the background,
What?
you can see David Bowie's shoe right in front of the curtain, like he's waiting on cue for action.
Oh my God.
And then he steps out from behind the curtain and walks into the lobby. So right away, it's like, and on the big screen, I've seen the missing pieces on the big screen. You can see that shoe as clear as day.
How have I never noticed that?
Yeah, it's quite something. So he goes to the counter and he asks if there's been a message from Judy. Now, originally,
yes, let's talk about it.
Yes, let's talk about it. Originally, Judy was supposed to be Josie's sister. I don't know how it was going to connect to Josie Packard, but Josie's sister was going to be Judy.
Judy is a huge mystery, by the way. I think Judy is like one of the main things that people are like, what? Because we're not going to talk about Judy, so who is she? But in the script, the desk attendant goes, "This is for you, the young lady, she left it." And he cuts himself off, but what he was about to say was, "The juvenile left this note for you." And to me, that's a very revealing line about the oh so mysterious Judy. She's a child, she's a little girl. The implications of that line seem to be that the staff member was about to say juvenile, and Judy was in it. And he believed that Judy was in a Lolita type situation, but he corrected himself maybe before he offended his customer. What do you think of that?
One of Lynch's favorite films is Lolita, and there is a whole scene in Kubrick's film where James Mason, playing the lead character of Humbert Humbert, is talking to a bellhop trying to get a room for him and Lolita.
I've seen all the Lolita movies and I've read the books, and this very much to me does seem like a reference to Lolita.
I never thought about it until just now. That's an extraordinary.
Well, I didn't think about it until I read the script, because in the missing piece, they change it from the senorita, the young lady left this for you. So I didn't put 2 and 2 together about her being a child until I read the script.
When you look at Laura Palmer smoking on her bed, looking at the diary, she has her legs crisscrossed exactly like Dolores Hayes in Lolita. Then we go to the FBI office, and it's just a longer version of what we see. I don't think that even if it hadn't made it into the finished film, I don't think that this is maybe the way it was going to be cut, because it seems like Lynch is specifically using angles that they didn't use, or takes they didn't use in the movie, because they say lines differently. It's almost like, well, if we're going to show this, let's not just show the same footage we've seen before. Let's use alternate takes and that type of thing. But it also goes to the theory of if there are multiple timelines being created.
Interesting.
I know this sounds ridiculous, but it didn't even click to me until I saw season 3 that when Phillip Jeffries points at Dale Cooper and says, "Who do you think that is there?"
Yeah.
There are so many details in Lynch's works that some people see right away, and sometimes it takes you, a little bit to get to it. But because so much of Fire Walk with Me, to me, as much as I like the film, is so truncated, I feel like there's aspects like that when you see it in the fuller version, not necessarily the fan edit, but with everything, with season 3, like season 3 to me made me understand how the Owl Cave ring works. I didn't understand it at all when I see Fire Walk with Me. Do you wear the ring? Do you not wear the ring? What's going on here? Until I saw season 3 and they put the ring on Ray, and all of a sudden Ray ends up in the lodge. And I thought, oh, that's why Laura Palmer is in the lodge at the end of Fire Walk with Me, because she put on the ring. And when she died, she went to the Black Lodge.
Phillip Jeffries' scenes, like in the movie, he obviously has a bad accent, but it's like passable. But it's like so bad whenever you get the extended cut of the scene. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's that bad. And the scene already has like these recurring jokes, and there are like funny moments, so it kind of does just like add to the comedy of the scene. But yeah,
Well,
it's
David
pretty
Bowie
terrible.
himself apparently was so embarrassed by the accent that he asked for another actor to redub him in season
Yeah. And of course, Lynch was like, no, it's great. I love it.
Now, I've always been an advocate for the Above the Convenience Store,
Yes, let's get into it.
the extended version. This should have been in the film.
Agreed. Yes. So for context, the way they cut it together in the movie is like Phillip Jeffries is like, I went to this place, and as he's telling the story, you hear his voiceover, and then we see the scenes of the convenience store very briefly, and then it returns back to him before, and then he disappears. Phillip Jeffries does. But in this, we get a shot of an electricity pole, almost like traveling through the electricity into the convenience store, and then we get a whole scene in there. I love every single moment we get above the convenience store. There's so much fun to be had here as a horror lover with the creepy editing, hypnotic music, and grotesque close ups. This scene calls to mind the chorus in a Greek drama. The chorus, for those who don't know, is a group of performers who, through songs and dances, set the tone of the play. They fill in gaps in the narrative and offer commentary on our characters' actions. Here, our woodsmen and various entities in the convenience store act as the chorus, taking turns lyrically to describe this other place they come from. A Greek chorus can foreshadow future events or even directly interact with characters to offer advice or warnings. In Firewalk with Me, this is like when Cooper and Laura psychically connect with the arm in the Black Lodge. I love the dialogue in this scene. To me, it's like poetry. And with the ring I thee wed is so odd to me. On one hand, you think it's some kind of possession wedding vows to make you become one. With the ring, then you both say firewalk with me. But also, if you've seen the movie, whenever you wear the ring, it means you're going to be murdered. So that's where I have some more confusions with the ring. To let me read, I just chose a chunk from the script of what's said in this scene. Each kind of, like I said, each entity is like kind of, they're all taking turns saying this, but I just think it's beautiful. So let me read it to you like a poem, because to me it is. We have descended from pure air, going up and down, intercourse between the two worlds, light of new discoveries. Why not be composed of materials and combinations of atoms? This is no accident. This is a Formica table. Green is its color, our world. Little excerpt, but again, it's just beautiful writing.
I find it interesting that even in the extended version, they dropped out the whole atoms line.
Mm-hmm.
Considering that the Black Lodge came into our world through the atom bomb.
Right.
It's one of the most cinematic moments of the whole movie.
Agreed.
And Lynch just cut it down to a minute.
I feel like at that point he was like having his arm pulled, with the time constraints. And there's a really interesting editing choice that doesn't make it into the final film, where you see Laura's face transparent with the blowing curtains, and this is before we've even met her in the movie yet. So to me, it's like already saying like, okay, when the story begins, Laura's already half in the Black Lodge because Bob has been tormenting her since she was a child.
Is it future? Is it past? It's almost like the movie presented to us, with the exception of the Annie sequence, is a prequel. You get the Teresa Banks story that leads into the Laura story. She dies, but when you see the fan edit or you read the script, it seems apparent that it was always supposed to be sort of this loosey-goosey, free-flowing through time type of thing, even though it does follow still the prequel structure. There's a lot more play. Is it happening now? Is it happening then?
And the last thing I'll say about it is I love how you get to see how much Bob and the Arm are like partners in crime. The way that they act, they're just like two peas in a pod. It's interesting.
Considering how much hatred the Arm has for Bob at the end of the film.
Exactly, yes. And the way it seems like the Arm is maybe kind of like helping Laura in some ways, but also at the same time, whenever you see this cut, you're like, oh, he's complicit in the crime.
All right, the next scene is Mike is the man sharing a cigarette. This is obviously it was before David Lynch and Mary Sweeney decided to turn the whole Laura and Donna go to school into a montage sequence, it was going to be kind of a longer scene. So you can see why it was cut out. No, we don't necessarily need it, but it is kind of fun to hear them talk about the $10,000 and all that, because that's going to play a factor into season 1.
My favorite part is that they're like, hey, can we ride you to school? And they're like, no, we need our girl talk before we go to school. We got to catch up with each other. So there's a scene in the script whenever Laura and Donna are walking to school where they talk about an upcoming test that they're having, and they talk about Laura's juggling of relationships with Bobby and James. I would love to see a film version of this scene. I love getting to see Laura and Donna's relationship dynamic when things are good between them. This conversation emphasizes their age, which is necessary because it's easy to forget they're high schoolers since the actors are much older. There's a line where Donna says, "Were you with Bobby last night, or are you two still fighting?" Laura says, "No and yes. I don't know what I'm going to do about Bobby. I know he's seeing someone else, and that's okay with me. And he thinks I'm seeing someone else, and that's not okay with him." I think that's very, very interesting, that line about Bobby being jealous and his double standards he has there. Also, it's a really clever addition to know that Donna isn't an accomplice in the affair, especially since we know how attracted to James she is, but ultimately she'll do anything for her best friend, Laura. So in that scene, it's revealed that anytime James wants to call up Laura, he doesn't call Laura's house, he calls Donna, and Donna communicates to Laura that she needs to meet up with James, and that's how they talk. Sneaky.
Well, one of the things that I am disappointed about in Fire Walk With Me, the movie, doesn't matter which version, because if you read the script, it's not in there either. So in season 1, how many hot and heavy moments do we get between Bobby and Shelly? They're always making out in her kitchen and all that. But there is no Bobby and Shelly moment whatsoever in Fire Walk With Me. And I feel like the only moment you ever see Laura and Shelly together is with the, I can't do the Meals on Wheels right now. And I personally think there should have been a moment or two of Laura and Shelly exchanging a look, having small talk that doesn't say anything but says everything, where Laura kind of reveals that she knows. And I find that interesting, considering how many quasi make-out, almost sex scenes we get between Bobby and Shelly in season 1, that they didn't think, oh, we could really go to town in the movie, and then even write a scene like that. So I find that interesting.
That's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that until you said it, but now I'm never going to be able to see the movie the same way.
All right, so the next scene, Laura realizes that someone's been ripping pages out of her diary. She runs down, or her mom's coming in with groceries, smoking a cigarette, and then they like share a drag, and then she runs off to Harold Smith. I mean, you can totally see why it was cut, because it does interrupt the flow. I love seeing Sarah in normalcy and not always in hysterics.
Yes. Right? Yeah, I agree. I like every single scene with Laura and her mom. They're all, to me, they would all make my cut. To me, what I love about this scene is like you see the casual rapport that you have with your parents at that age. The way she leaves without giving her mom a hug or a kiss goodbye, and the mom kind of like rolling her eyes. It's the little things that you do because you never expect a near future tragedy to happen. And in the next scene, Sarah is confronting Laura because she's like, "You lied to me. Those school books you said you took my car to go get, they were upstairs in your room. So where were you really?" I love this scene, but to me, the directing here seems a little bit off, because there's a moment whenever Sarah bangs her hand on the piano with fury about Laura lying to her. And I feel like the outburst is out of character for Sarah, who's more worried, generally sweet, and is often on the quieter side. It's a typical fight a teenage girl might have with her mom about going into her room and sharing of clothes. But this scene showcases also how good at lying Laura is. It doesn't take her a second after she's caught in the lie to come up with another one. "I need to see Bobby, and I know you don't like him." It's a very believable lie. Also, the expression in Sarah whenever she says that Laura can tell her anything and she'd understand, to me is very telling. There's so many subtle things Grace Zabriskie, the actress who plays Sarah, does to let us know as an audience that deep down, Sarah knows about what Leland does to Laura. But she seems not to be brave enough to step in or ask outright. Maybe she doesn't want to believe it. But this moment, it seems like she's asking Laura to tell her the whole truth, not just the truth about where she was. I think she's in denial, but she knows.
Yeah, I mean, I think she knows something is going on. I don't know if she knows exactly what is going on, because even Laura isn't sure what is going on. I mean, there is a possibility that they're both in the dark about who Bob is.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that she's in on it, but I do believe that she's going through some sort of psychological torment with herself,
Oh,
where she doesn't want to
absolutely
fess up to the fact that she knows, or
I
she
also
doesn't want to believe it to be true. And the next missing piece is a normal family dinner between them, where
right,
Leland comes stomping in, acting like a
right,
giant, acting
right.
goofy, wanting them all to repeat things in Norwegian, and it's nice to have this glimpse of tenderness between Laura and her father before everything else goes down.
I know this is a favorite amongst fans. I know this is a favorite amongst the cast members.
Mm.
To me, I feel like it's pitched a little too high,
Mm.
because I get what they're trying to do, because the Norwegians are coming. We're going to see that in the pilot and all that, and it is goofy and it is funny, but compared to all the other scenes in the Laura story, it is tonally like just a hair too much up. You
Yeah.
know, like I would have loved it a little more played down. And I think because it was pitched a little too up, I think that's why Lynch cut it.
Yeah, I wouldn't include this in my cut, but it is really fascinating watching the Blue Rose version and getting to see this dinner scene before the infamous dinner scene that we're familiar with in the movie where he
Right.
digs under her fingernails and stuff. Like that was such an interesting contrast
Right. I
because
agree.
it's
I agree.
framed the same way. But this is the Leland that we're familiar with in the show. Before we find out that he's Bob, like this is something I could easily see Leland doing with his erratic, like breaking out to song and dancing. That's so him, and this is also him, like acting like a giant at the dinner table and trying to get everybody else involved. So it's funny to see how Laura would react to like her kooky, embarrassing dad acting that way. And it does show how all the Palmers are a little bit insane, and Leland is the driving force of that joy there. Because maybe Sarah's a little bit more closed off, but he pulls out that goofy side out of her. And same with Lauren. Maybe they roll their eyes and they're too cool for it, but then there's also moments when they're all alone at a dinner table they can laugh about some funny languages. It shows that she doesn't suspect her father, which is another plus, I think.
Right.
But you can get that without needing that scene.
All right. The next scene is Laura's party. She sneaks out of the house and meets a trucker and
Yes.
exchanges sex for drugs. It's a very quick scene. You know, I kind of wish it was Leo as opposed to just a random trucker, just to kind of give a little more connections there. But I remember reading this in the script and going, "Oh wow, that's interesting." It's a little. I mean, I can see why it was cut. It's really quick.
And it's redundant because everything that happens in the scene is already established later on in Partyland.
Yeah.
So you don't need it. The only thing it really reveals is that this side hustle she does for drugs is something she routinely does on the down low.
Yeah.
But it does give it a feel like, oh, this is just a typical Wednesday for her.
Yeah. All right. The next one is the 2x4 scene at the Packard Sawmill between Josie, Pete, and Del Mibler. I can't help but think that when Lynch went back and watched the pilot before working on the script, that because when Pete is at the Packard Sawmill and he's going 2x4, 4x, you know, that he was like, let's do a whole scene about that.
Yeah.
It's a very cute scene. It's not in the script, I don't think. I think it's one of those created on the fly moments. I wish that Josie was saved more for a scene with Laura, because if we're just cutting to just Laura's story, that would be a way to ensure that the actors didn't get cut out of the film by having them with Laura.
Yes.
And so what Lynch and Bob Ingalls did before they started writing the script is they watched the pilot and they watched the final episode. And then Bob Ingalls would sprinkle in things here and there. But because it wasn't announced until episode 1. She was tutoring Josie in English. That's why it didn't make it into the script, because Lynch didn't go past the pilot. But I mean, it's a cute scene. I can totally see why it got cut. It is sad because I mean, I could be wrong, but I think this is the only movie that Jack Nance did for Lynch and got cut out.
Oh, wow. Yeah, had this scene been in Twin Peaks, I would have eaten it up. But in this movie, I was just waiting for it to end.
I do like, though, the transition in the fan edit when Bobby's got the flashlight and he flashes the camera with it at the end of the scene, and it dissolves to the train going across, and it's saying, like, 3 days before or something like that. Like, that was a great transition. But yeah, it doesn't belong in the film at all. The next scene, Kind of Quiet, longer scene in the double R with Laura hanging out with the Meals on Wheels. Ed and Nadine come in for coffee, and then they leave.
And to your point earlier, you were saying you wish there was at least one scene between Laura and Shelly where they kind of like have a glance. There is that, and this, I do think there is in this missing piece, because there's a part where Norma is like, "Oh, can you like go help Laura with Meals on Wheels?" And Shelly's like, I don't know exactly what she says, but she's kind of like, "Do I have to? Like, I don't really want to." And Norma's like, "Yeah, go help her." So she reluctantly goes. And to me, I always read that as like, oh, it's because she's like with Bobby and she feels awkward around Laura.
I agree with you. But let me just throw this out. Because that scene is shot high above, almost like from, like, like the ending of the film where we see Laura and Cooper looking at the angel. It's the same angle, viewpoint looking down. If they were closer, you would have been able to read that on Machen's face. But because it's so standoffish from the drama that we're watching, it just feels like two women having a conversation.
It needs another angle. Yeah.
I mean, I love it the way it is. And for a while, I thought, until I saw the missing pieces, I thought maybe Lynch shot that angle because Peggy Lipton's hair was so short compared to the pilot when it was so long. I thought maybe that's how he was trying to mask it, but obviously not, because we get lots of shots of Peggy Lipton in the missing pieces. It was only like 3 seconds. They could have still had Ed and Nadine walk in the theatrical cut, and it would have been, I think, fine.
Yes.
Obviously, when Norma walks around the counter and sits down and starts crying, at that point you go, there's no way this would make the theatrical cut. It's too long.
Oh,
I mean, I love it.
that part. Yeah.
I love it, but it's like, it's too long for her walking around and sitting down. And then Ed coming back and making the date. That's one of the reasons why I love the fan edit, because it allows the film to breathe. You really feel like you're in Twin Peaks in the fan edit, whereas in the theatrical cut, you don't really get a feel of the town. Like, you never see the waterfall, you never see the Great Northern, you never see, the diner is shot at strange angles, so
it's like we're watching the diner's surveillance footage is what it feels like. And I kind of like that framing, and like you said, having the scene having room to breathe is really great, because you see, Ed comes in, goes out, Norma cries, he comes back in and comforts her. Like, all that it's fun, and it's all happening in the wake of like Laura just being right outside in the parking lot. I feel like they could have kept it in there. It would make my cut.
Now comes the best friend scene. Laura goes over to Donna's house. We get an extended version of her crying at the door. They walk in, and Donna's mom and dad come in.
And this happens right after Laura sees her father exit the house, and she's hiding in the bushes. So she's like, it can't be my dad. It can't be my dad. That's what she's upset about, and why she's seeking out this comfort.
Right. And there was a scene shot when she was under the bushes where a neighbor came out to check on her.
Yes.
And that scene footage has still not been found.
I saw that scene in the script, and I was like, I'm glad it's not there, because, I mean, after she was murdered, wouldn't the neighbor bring that up? Like, yeah.
Well, one thing I've always said is, when you watch Fire Walk with Me, how did Leland Palmer not get arrested on the first day?
Yeah.
Considering that all the employees at Moe's Motors would have seen him screaming and shouting and acting erratic, right? You would think they'd be like, "Sheriff, get down here. We have something to say." This is another one of those scenes like the Above the Convenience Store, where I think most fans would say probably should have been in the theatrical cut. And it would lead up to one of my favorite reveals in the script, but it's not in any version of the movie.
What?
And that is when Will talks about how, oh, where's my flower? Oh, I left it at Sparkwood in 21. So when Laura jumps off James' bike at the end of the movie and he peels off, if you watch the corners of the frame, it starts to move a little bit and then it cuts to Laura walking in the woods. And what it was going to do, it was going to pan down to the road to Will Hayward's wilted rose on the ground. But I love this scene. I think it's really beautiful. Obviously, if you throw down any Badalamenti music into a scene, it's just going to take it over the top.
It is so comforting to get to see Laura with Mr. and Miss Hayward. They're like her other set of parents, and it shows how much Dr. Hayward really cares for her, that he'll even let her smoke in their own living room. They can tell how upset she is, and they're all here to cheer her up. Also, it gives weight to the pilot of Twin Peaks when Doc has to look at her body. He delivered her as a baby and loved her like she was his own daughter. So it's just a really sweet scene overall. And there's a part, this is in the missing piece or it's in the script where he talks about the angels.
That's in the missing pieces. It's not in the script because they didn't have anything about the angels in the script.
Right. Well, he says he has a secret. Dr. Hayward is like, I have a secret message for you, Laura. The angels will return whenever you see the one that's sent down for you, and you will weep with joy. So I would not keep that line, in my opinion, because it would make the ending feel trite, which to me, the ending of this movie is really magical. So everything about the Hayward scene sans this angel line, which is odd to me. Like,
it kind of creates sort of a bookend, right?
Yeah.
That's probably ultimately why the whole scene was cut out.
Yeah. And there's some humor in here between Donna and Laura where they're like, you're the muffin. No, you're the muffin. And she's like, no, Donna, you're the muffin. And then whenever Donna shuts the door, Laura turns around. She's like, Donna, I am the muffin. But it does call to mind like Laura's odd sense of humor that she has, which I really enjoy. It makes me think of the turkey gobble gobble scene from earlier on.
It's so crazy because when you first see the movie and she says, I am the muffin, it's just kind of this weird throwaway line that kind of takes on its own mystique. And then when you see the missing pieces or read the script and you realize, oh my God, there's like a whole origin tale for this line. That's amazing because when you think about it in that context, where it's like, no, you're the muffin, no, I'm the muffin, and then for her at the club to basically be like, no, I am the muffin. She says it so confidently. That's really quite something.
Again, I'm going to bring up the turkey scene because it's the scene where she's like, having her rendezvous with James in the locker room, and there's a joke where it's like, you're a turkey, gobble gobble. In the script, it's like a joke where they're like both laughing as they're talking about the turkey line. But then whenever she performs it in the movie, she's like crying as she says, gobble gobble. And she's just like weeping and the music is playing and it's a really sad moment, even though she's saying the most absurd, silly things. I don't know. I like how David Lynch can have both things at the same time in his movies.
Laura, after talking with James, walks back up the stairs, hears Bob's voice coming through the fan, and she stops, looks at it, and smiles. 100%. I would have sped up the credits even faster at the end if I needed to make sure that this got in there. It's so powerful. It's so creepy. I think some of these missing pieces, if they had been in the theatrical cut, it would have been harder for the critics to dismiss the movie.
So we do get a short cut of her being possessed under the fan in the final cut, but I would have kept the whole version in it for sure. I like it. It reminds me of the Secret Diary of the Laura Palmer again, and it establishes the fan being a means of electricity instead of maybe just being a whirring white noise Leland turns on. And also her acting is superb here, and she's clearly struggling to fight possession off. I love it.
It also suggests that Bob is already partly in her.
Yes. And there's another part of the scene too where her mom is like accusing Laura of stealing her blue sweater. And she's like, Mom, you're wearing the blue sweater. And then Sarah's like, I'm about to have a nervous breakdown. And Laura is like, Mom, no, you're okay, like comforting her. So I think this is another great scene with Laura and her mom. It shows how scrambled Sarah's brain is from being drugged over the years, is how I interpret it. I wish they kept it, and it makes sense that she would be so unsettled for a reason why she's confused. Because, like, if you go by the theory of, like, she doesn't know she's being drugged, she's probably thinking she's losing her mind. And it's great to see Laura comfort her mother. It's another one of those moments where you're just waiting for Laura to tell her mom the truth so they can get away from Leland, but instead, Laura comforts her mother, which makes it seem like she wants to protect her mother's heart instead of come clean.
There's another really cool thing about that moment too, is in the script it's not there, but in the movie David Lynch has Sarah Palmer say,
"Oh no, Mom, it's happening again."
It's happening again.
Yes.
That is amazing to have the character of Sarah Palmer quoting not only the giant, but also Annie Blackburn, because Annie Blackburn tells Cooper, I'm afraid it's all going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the fireman's not in the movie, I don't know if he was filming the Addams Family movies or not at this point, but he's not in the film. He's not even in the script, considering how important he is in the series and in season 3. But Annie shows up in the movie. Like, isn't it interesting that, like, all these characters were cut out of the film? Jack Nance is cut out of the movie. Annie Blackburn makes the cut. The next scene, Sunday at the Johnsons, we get a very interesting exterior of a church, and then we get sort of a longer version of Leo and Shelly bickering in the kitchen.
This is how you clean, Shelly.
Leo Johnson is a drug dealing pedophile, wife beater, and he's played for laughs in this scene.
But I can't tell if that's intentional or if it's just because he's such a bad actor that it's funny.
No, I think it's intentional, because when he says, first thing you got to do, Shelly, is have a good attitude. That's the key. Like, that's a comedic line. And then he slaps her across the head. And I have been in several screenings of this movie. The audience howls every time he smacks her in the head. They think it's the funniest thing ever. And I miss the Leo Johnson that was so scary, putting the soap in the sock, and swinging it at Shelly. I miss the Leo Johnson of Shelly, you smoke these, right? To me, it's like that scene about the cigarettes in the pilot. That's a darkly comedic scene too, but it's very scary. And it's like Lynch can do it. If you look at Bobby Peru and Wild at Heart, if you look at Frank and Blue Velvet, he can walk that line between super scary and darkly funny. But this scene is specific. There's nothing scary about it. It's Leo Johnson just played primarily as like a doofus.
Well, my viewing experience has always been like, ha 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 ha, and then he hits her and I'm like, oh yeah, Leo is awful. Like, to me, I've never laughed at her getting hit. Like, that's just weird to me that people would do that. But I guess, like, for me, he's just a bad actor. And I don't say that as like a negative, because I love to laugh at him. But also, in the defense of maybe, like, why isn't he as scary, is because this seems like maybe right after they got married and it seemed like they're moving in together. He's laying down the rules, like, this is how I expect a woman to keep my house. He's like showing her what he expects from his wife. And also, it seems like maybe, like, because they were just married, maybe the abuse got worse over time, sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's also the choice of shooting it from one angle. Again, it's just the kitchen in season 1 was always dark and moody, and because Shelly would always have the curtains drawn to have Bobby in there and all that. This is just brightly lit, and it's very clear it's a soundstage.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there.
All right, the next up is in my top 5, if not top 3 favorite of the missing pieces, and that's Norma and Ed in the truck in the forest. Absolutely love it. I understand why it was cut. It's not even in the script, but it is Twin Peaks in a nutshell. It's got the mood when she is playing with the radio and finds the saxophone version of the theme and the trees blowing. I love this couple who's having this affair, having to sneak off into the woods to hide. Meanwhile, Laura and Donna are out with these guys, and they're just right out in the open. And then you have Norma and Ed stuck in a truck taking breathalyzers.
They're both crammed in the back seat. Yeah. I I remember you told me that this was one of your favorite missing pieces. So when I went and I rewatched it, I was like really paying attention because it's just kind of one of those ones that I think it's not forgettable, but I guess I haven't like it doesn't impact me the way it emotionally impacts you, I guess.
Mhm.
I was like watching it, and it is a really sweet scene. It's another one of those things where I'm like, if it's in the show, I would have liked it, but in the movie, I'm like, I don't really need this here. But it does make me think of I'm a Swiftie. There's a Taylor Swift song called "Illicit Affairs." I imagine when I listen to it, I literally imagine Norma wrote the song. But there's a line where she's like, "What started in beautiful rooms ends with meetings in parking lots," and it's just the shame of like just falling in love with somebody and you're both having an affair, and maybe it started out as a beautiful thing, but through the act of keeping it a secret has kind of like festered even the relationship itself.
Can you imagine if they were having this moment in the woods as Leland marched Laura and Ronette past them? You know, it's
Right.
like
Yeah.
they just happened to be a few days earlier. All right, so the next one is Laura and Donna in the car, and then they arrive at the Power and the Glory, which basically takes us into the party land scene. I understand why they cut it, because obviously it's good to just have a hard cut to there, but they had to add that line "Welcome to Canada" because most people think that this is the back room of the Roadhouse.
The only thing I like about the scene is that it establishes that Partyland is a drive off from the Roadhouse, because Partyland, the set looks nearly identical to the Roadhouse besides the red light. And I always thought when I watched the movie that Partyland was like a secret speakeasy hidden in the Roadhouse.
One thing I love though is when they make the hard turn into the parking lot and they start doing the donuts, that it says Cooper's Tires. I mean, I understand maybe why they cut it, just because Laura's screaming, "You're such a downer,"
I
to
don't
Donna.
like that at all. To me, that's out of character for her, because Laura doesn't even like Donna drinking. Like at the house earlier before they went out, Donna was like, "Are you gonna fix me a drink?" She's like, "No." She's like kind of like a protective older sister type of figure to Donna. She doesn't like her drinking, so why would she like peer pressure her into doing cocaine? It just makes absolutely no sense. And I interpret Laura letting Donna tag along as Laura seeing how far Donna is willing to go before she runs off scared. I feel like it's kind of like a bully behavior thing, because she never genuinely expected naive little Donna to be this determined to go as far as she does.
I understand Lynch probably wanted to just kind of do a standalone scene, but I do think it's a missed opportunity that it didn't have some affiliation with One Eye Jugs.
Yeah, especially like you said, it being in Canada.
All right, so the next one is the Fire Walk With Me scene with Mike sitting in the motel room with the circle of candles.
Very quick, very
Very
brief.
quick. You can totally see why it was cut. It's just
Yeah.
it's one of those things they were like, it'd be cool to shoot that. Maybe we can have a place for it. And there just wasn't a place for it.
It reminds me of you know how the pilot of Twin Peaks has like an European film version where there's an alternate ending?
Right.
It reminds me of the alternate ending for that with the candles.
Absolutely. Where Cooper says, "Make a wish."
Yeah.
All right, the next sequence is the party girl scenes with Leland being found out by Teresa Banks, and he makes the rendezvous to be with her. We get the extended version of them at the motel with Laura and Ronette, which I really like because we get to really see the ring. And then she tracks him down, calls him on the payphone, and he realizes, oh my God, she is going to blackmail me, and I need to off her. I think a lot of this is essential.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be everything, but I do think that we needed to have a little bit more Teresa Banks would be good in the movie.
I agree. We could use more of her. She's so beautiful, especially. I'm like, I want to see her face more. I personally like the way that the movie cuts this scene, but I also agree that like it is kind of like essential in a way where I think it's really helpful to first time viewers, or maybe people who saw the movie but didn't pick up on the line um, about Teresa asking about Laura's father. It's a very throwaway line where Laura is talking to Ronette, and she brings up that she was asking about her father, and she's like, "My dad," and then they move on to the next subject. But all that being said, I prefer the movie without this scene because it rewards the viewer by feeling clever, and it's a nice thing to realize on the rewatch. Like, I didn't pick up on that the first time I watched it, but then the second time when I watched Firewalk with Me, I was like, oh shoot, she was blackmailing Leland. This version like spells it out for you.
The next one is, don't forget Laura's secret stash. Leland cheerfully reminds Laura while heading out that it is Johnny Horn's birthday. Laura and Sarah sit at the table silently. Then Laura snorts the last of her stash, and then she goes to the school to tell Bobby about this. This was primarily cut because they never shot the Ben Horn scenes, so they didn't need anything to lead up to them. But
yeah, I really enjoy getting to see Laura and her mom just look at each other, smiling and enjoying each other's company at breakfast. I like how Sarah subtly mocks Leland's erratic, don't forget. And she kind of does it to try and crack a smile from Laura, it seems like. But when this doesn't work, she just gives like a long, slow exhale off her cigarette. I like that part of it. And should we talk about the Ben Horn scene since you brought it up?
So there was a whole thing at Johnny Horn's birthday where Laura and Ben have a scene together, and it suggested that there's drugs and sex involved. And from what I understand, the actor Richard Beamer, because his character had changed throughout the course of making the original series, he didn't feel like it was productive for him as an actor to regress it back. Even though it was supposed to be earlier, he thought emotionally he was past that, so he didn't want to come back and play that.
Ah, I didn't know that was the reason. Interesting. Yeah. I really loved that scene when I read it in the script. I was like, oh, again, it made me think of The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer. I was like, we're finally getting a scene. And in the scene, we see that Ben Horn has a framed picture of Laura Palmer on his desk, doesn't have any picture of his own children or his family on his desk. And his wife points it out. And she's like very passive aggressive about it. All that is just pure gold. I would keep the beginning of the scene and end it after Ben says the photographer, like, happy birthday, Johnny. I don't know if that makes sense because the scene goes on. It like goes on past that, and we see a little bit of like Johnny and his antics with his themed birthday party. I don't need all that, but I like the reminder of Laura and Ben having this affair. It's an important plot point in the show. He's like one of the main red herrings, so I feel like we need to see him. And it's so blatantly weird to just have a picture of somebody else's daughter on your desk.
Well, he had that in the show, but I will go as far as say this. If the actor Richard Beamer had come to me and said, these are my issues, I would have rewritten the scene to make it more subtle or change it up a little bit so he was comfortable with it, because I feel Ben Horn is too important to not have in Laura's story.
Yeah.
I would even argue that Fire Walk with Me, even in the fan edit, as great as it is, to me, can never be one of Lynch's true masterpieces because Ben Horn is not in it. And I don't feel like you can really tell Laura's story without Ben Horn playing some sort of function in it. He's so big in the series.
He's huge, yeah.
And to the point where we think he's the killer at one point.
Yeah, for a long time. I thought he was the killer for a long time.
Yeah, I feel like if the actor didn't want to come back for X, Y, and Z, I would have changed whatever he needed, because it's like you couldn't tell Laura's story without Leland, right? I don't think you can tell her story without Ben. There's not even a mention of Ben Horn in the finished film.
Exactly. That's the main thing, is like, okay, he doesn't want to be in it. Mention him at least.
What about Laura going to the hotel and trying to get an appointment with him, and she can't reach him?
That's brilliant.
Right? Just so we can see on the big screen the establishing shot of the hotel and the falls, and then Laura walking through the lobby. That would have been enough for me, even if you didn't even do a Ben Horn scene. Just acknowledge him.
Fit it in before, like, fit it in, or I could see it put in place around the time like her stash runs out. I could see her like just going to every person she knows that can connect her to her addiction.
That would have been great. All right, the next one, Bernie the Mule. And this is Harry, Andy, and Hawk sitting around the sheriff's station. It's one of those scenes, again, where it's like, I can totally see why it was cut. It has no bearing on anything of the movie we're watching. But it is great to see, obviously, them in their prime. I just wish that they had found I remember even at the time when they were making the film thinking, well, they can't really show the sheriff department because Laura had no ties to them. So why, they shouldn't even be in the movie. And they weren't in the film. But you would think that that somehow, maybe it was just because Lynch and Bob Ingalls wrote this thing so fast to get it made before the Cannes Film Festival. But I feel like there maybe was an opportunity to figure out other ways they could have incorporated the sheriff's department rather than just having them sitting in a boardroom staring at each other.
Yeah, I agree with you. The whole joke of the scene is really funny because they're like, okay, Bernie's coming on foot. And Andy's like, oh my gosh, he's coming on foot. And then he's like, yeah, are you worried about us like having too many paths to cover? And he's like, no, like that's a lot of walking he's gonna have to do. Like he's so empathetic, he's thinking about the criminal's point of view and worrying about him.
All right, the next one, the baby laxative. Bobby pulls up in the car and finds out that they killed a man over baby laxatives instead of cocaine, and he gets mad and screams and throws it everywhere. And yeah, I mean, it's all right. I mean, I thought about this scene the other day as a way that it probably still would have been cut, but it would have answered a plot hole if Bobby had shown up with the body of Deputy Cliff in the trunk. At no point do they ever find the body. And I don't think Laura and Bobby covered it up that well with dirt that night while they were stoned out of their mind. And Bobby goes on to become a police officer.
Yeah.
After murdering a cop, right? So I think I need something in there to suggest that he did something with the body, because he killed a man, a cop, that Jacques Renault sent to meet them. So don't you think Jacques Renault finding out that this guy got killed would have turned Bobby over when he got arrested for the murder, since it was only just a few days before? And
he was already trying to take Bobby down, obviously, so why wouldn't he turn him in?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with you. It makes no sense. And it pisses me off for him. Do we even find out in the original cut that it was baby laxative? We don't.
It wasn't until I read the script, and at first I thought that's brilliant because it kind of calls back to the whole dead dog farm thing.
Life kicking you and you're down is what it's like. It's awful for him. And mostly for Laura.
All right, so the next one, Send Me a Kiss, is when Dr. Jacoby calls Laura. I think this is primarily cut because they mentioned Johnny Horn's birthday.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
But other than that, I feel like this needed to be in there because, again, like Ben Horn, Jacoby's infatuation with Laura was a huge thing, considering that episode 1 ends with him opening the coconut and pulling out the necklace. I feel like that would be an important thing to have in the film.
I do agree that it's important, especially because in the show, we're really just getting Jacoby's perspective of the affair. He's like, we were in love with each other, but it was forbidden. But whenever we see this, it's like, in this missing piece, Laura seems annoyed by him. Like, he seems like the clingy boyfriend type. Like, she just wants to get off of her back.
She's got a lot of those.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Asparagus. Of course, they had to do this scene because of what we hear in the pilot, right? About the diary. Asparagus for dinner again. I hate asparagus. Does that mean I'll never grow up? It's kind of strange. He's just reading the Bible. Like, I don't know. To me, after season 2, I kind of want more from Major Briggs in a Twin Peaks movie. But I guess they're going back to that stern military father type you got in season 1, you know.
But it calls to mind that earlier, how we were talking about how the Dr. Hayward says to Laura, like, the angels, they're gone, but they're going to come back for you. If there's anyone to say that to her, shouldn't it be Briggs? Like, he's religious and he's like in the know.
That would have been amazing. But I will say this, Donna's family in season 1 talk about like, oh, we saw Audrey at church this morning, remember? So there is that. But yeah, I agree. If Major Briggs had said that to Laura, like on her, like after Bobby walks her out and goes back down to his basement, if Laura was leaving and Major Briggs says, oh, Laura, I got something to tell you, and walks up and gave her that message, I would have probably passed out because it would have been one of the most beautiful things ever.
Yeah.
Considering, wow.
I love Briggs. He's also one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, that. Oh, I'm right there with you on that one. I like that a lot.
So there are two like parts of this scene. Pretty much, we see her enter the house. She's like, "Where's Bobby?" In the basement. Oh, where he belongs. Ha ha ha. She goes down. We get the scene that we see in the movie with them in the basement together, and then and then we get her exit as she says goodbye to his parents. For me, if it was my cut, I would keep it the way they did it with cut to them making out in the basement, and then I would want to see the exit scene, but cut the entrance scene. I like how it establishes where they are, because whenever you see the basement scene, I didn't really get that they're in the basement. I didn't really know where they were. I didn't think about it, but
in the garage.
Yeah, you see her come upstairs. You're like, oh, of course, bad boy hangs out in his parents' basement. That makes sense.
Again, I don't know if this is the way it would have been in the movie, because it is sort of like a master shot of just seeing them walk across, and then when he says goodbye, they're off camera. But there is something very high schoolish about the way they walk into the kitchen, and she's kind of putting her coat on.
Yeah, after just making out in the basement, you got to go say goodbye to the parents. That's so funny and true to life. And the way Briggs's wife just lovingly looks at him while he's reading the Bible is so good. I love it.
All right. Good night, Lucy. Lucy calls Harry and Andy in the interrogation room. I think it works better in the fan edit with the moving through time music underneath it, because it creates a sense of loneliness and isolation.
It's fine in the missing pieces only. I agree.
It doesn't lead anywhere. So it's like, but it does kind of predict the whole I know how cell phones work moment in season 3 with like not knowing about the radio and then colliding into Andy. All right. The next one is absolutely, to me, 100% needed to be in the film. And that's Laura waiting for James to pull up, and her dad pulls up in the car and walks into the house. And there's that tense.
Interesting.
In the theatrical cut, it plays like dad is already home and is looking out the window when she leaves with James. But it's established in the show that Leland called Laura from Ben Horn's office. So to have him pull up to the house shows that he was at work. And I think because Laura is so drugged out of her mind, and because she wrote in her diary, I'm nervous about meeting Jay tonight, it's my belief that when she answers the phone in her room, it's her dad that calls her, and she thinks it's James. And that is why he comes home.
Interesting.
And then he senses something's off, and then he walks in, and then she gets on the bike, and that's when he looks out the window.
Personally, I like the way it was cut in the movie, but I wasn't thinking about like how you said the dad needed to be at work.
I don't know. I really like the tension of him walking up the staircase and sensing something's off. It's very scary. It's very tense, and it's the kind of stuff that Lynch does so well.
Yeah.
All right, the next one, Distant Screams. The log lady hears Laura and Ronette screaming in the woods. I love it. It's quick, but I love it. I wish they kept it.
I wish it was in there too. And it shows just how like haunted she is by this like otherworldly knowing. Like she's tormented. She knows something is happening to Laura, but I also think that she doesn't know all the parts. It's like obscured messages for her, so it's not like she can just call the cops and be like, Leland's about to murder Laura. She's like, oh my god, I know that there's something going on, but it's out of my control and I can do nothing to stop it.
All right, next one, Lonesome Foghorn Blows. This is really quick. It just shows Laura's body drifting in the water. It's a real quick shot. I can see why it was cut.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I hate to say it's pretty because of what it is, but it is a beautifully shot scene. Could have left it in there.
All right, now we're going to hit the epilogue. Now there's several sections of this. First up, it says Glastonbury Grove some months later, which suggests we're going further and even past the series, because the series is only 1 month. This is some months later. And we get Annie Blackburn being wheeled into the hospital on a stretcher. And what's really interesting about this is when she comes out of the lodge at the end of season 2, she is wearing the Miss Twin Peaks dress. But when she shows up in Laura's room and in the hospital, she's wearing Caroline's dress. When she's talking to the nurse, she gives the same message that she gave Laura, but she flips the names. Instead of saying Dale and Laura, she says Laura and Dale. She flips them. Again, another thing of the movie flipping things around. The nurse takes the ring. To me, this would have been a post-credit sequence where we see the ring is moving on. It's continuing to move.
That idea of it being an after-credit scene is banger. I love that idea.
Cooper encounters the man from another place. We get the line, is it future, is it past? Someone else now has the ring. You can't leave, you are home. I love all of this. And then we get the doppelganger in the bathroom. I haven't brushed my teeth. If that had been the end of the post-credit sequence, you would have just left haunted by what you just saw.
Yeah, this is something I go back and forth on, this epilogue, as you will, especially the way it's done in the blue rose cut. I really don't appreciate it. Your idea of it being a post-credit scene is interesting to me. I maybe could get down with that, but it's like, okay, Laura's murdered. We just witnessed the most like traumatic, like sobering, sad thing. We're seeing him get rid of her body. Then it cuts to Annie like immediately being rushed to the hospital. We're in the Black Lodge. Annie and the ring moves on. Then we cut to Laura being in the Black Lodge and her seeing the angel. And it just ruins the whole... To me, the end of the original cut of Fire Walk with Me is untouchable. Like, it is just like, for me, a religious experience watching the very end of Fire Walk with Me, from murder to, her seeing the angel. It's beautiful. So that's why I just don't really fuck with it as much as you necessarily do. But if it's proposed like as a post-credit scene, I could see that. Maybe you would have something to look forward to because you're like, oh my god, the story's continuing. We're gonna get a season 3.
Because we've already established Annie in the film itself with her giving the message to Laura, it's okay to show her because we've seen her, right? So, but it's also tying into the ring. Even if you didn't even include the rest of the epilogue stuff and it just ended with the nurse taking the ring and leaving, and that's where it ends.
Yeah,
I'm cool with that.
Me too.
And I don't think it would have taken away from the Laura story. It would have shown that the Laura story is continuing on.
Yeah, and again, I'm questioning the ring. Like, so the nurse takes the ring off of Annie's finger. Does that mean that she's getting murdered next because everybody who wears the ring gets murdered? Like, what happens to the nurse?
That's that's a blue rose question right there.
I know, it is. Nobody has the answer. And also, I liked getting to see the extended cut of the doppelganger Cooper, because season 2 ends with him being like, how's Annie? How's Annie? Boom. But we get to see them bust in and talk, and we get to see Kyle MacLachlan's performance as Dark Cooper.
Yeah, but just the early stages, right? Because he's still trying to figure out how to be human. And then when season 3 starts, it's been 25 years and he's grown out the bob hair and he's like Mr. Cool. I love the fact that it's also shot on the same set that they shot the series on, because it's identical.
Well, I was like, okay, was this just a deleted scene from season 2 that they added in?
So when Lynch came back, because he left for a little bit, right? And he comes back for the last 6 episodes of season 2. Basically, when Annie arrives till the obviously the last episode, because Gordon's in all of it as well, so he was there. So he fell back in love with Twin Peaks, and he's like, you know what? I want my next film to be a Twin Peaks movie. So him and Bob Engels quickly put this thing together. So when they were going to shoot, they only had the sets from the final 6 episodes. Anything else had been struck. So
that's important. Context.
And that is why Harold Smith's apartment looks different, because Harold Smith's house got knocked down and made into another set.
They should have referenced the show and made it look better.
Yeah.
That set is so bad.
Yeah. But, you know, obviously Cooper's room was the last scene in the show, so they still had that set. Donna's house had, you know, Wyndham Earle coming over and Doc Hayward hitting Ben into the fireplace. So that living room was intact. I just find it interesting because the diner was part of the sets, but they chose to shoot it at the real diner.
Yeah.
You know? But they didn't have the Palmer living room anymore because the Laura story had been over for a while. So that had changed. So they shot all the living room stuff in the real house.
Oh.
So,
wow.
All right. So last thoughts on Fire Walk with Me, the missing pieces, the script, the fan edit, you name it.
Yes. I think overall, I like it whenever Twin Peaks sticks to the last 7 days of Laura Palmer's life, not every character in Twin Peaks' life. I think maybe the problems that people had with this movie originate with the title, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Maybe if it was titled The Last 7 Days of Laura Palmer or something like that, maybe more people would be down to just follow her and what she gets up to. But yeah, from the moment we get Laura on, I pretty much only want to see her because she is mesmerizing. Cheryl Lee deserves an Oscar for this role. Retrospectively, she needs the Oscar because it's an outstanding performance by her. I like the missing pieces as a fangirl. I think it's fun. The Blue Rose cut, I don't see myself returning to that anytime soon because, like I said, I believe that in the second half, once you get like to the 2-hour mark, it just not even just the time thing, it's just like, even though I know what's going to happen, I am like waiting for this lead up to the murder. I'm waiting to see her jump off of James' bike in the woods, and everything that interrupts a Laura moment is just annoying to me. What are your final thoughts?
I do wish they had found some way to have Laura answer the phone and have a cutaway and have it be Madeline Ferguson so we could see Cheryl Lee talking to herself.
Oh my God. I didn't even think about Madeline once.
Here's the thing. Cheryl Lee is an incredible, amazing actor who, in my humble opinion, should have had a even better career than what she's had.
I know we're concluding, but talking about that scene at the end, whenever she's murdered and she finds herself in the Black Lodge in Fire Walk with Me, like the look on her face, it's like, oh, like to me, it's like, I mean, if you're thinking about it religiously, it's like, oh, I didn't make it to heaven, like because I sinned so much in my life, because I did drugs, because I did whatever you want to say that Laura did, that's sinful. Like I didn't make it to heaven. Or like to me, when she opened the Black Lodge, like she's horrified, and then whenever but she's accepting her fate, she's stoic about it, and then when she sees the angel, like she cries tears of joy because she's like, oh my God, like I didn't think that this was ever going to happen to me. And I interpret maybe her like soul ascending to heaven or wherever the good place is that the angel is taking her. But I also think that the Black Lodge is kind of like we've been talking about, this limbo time loop where she goes to heaven and moves on, but because season 3 they go back in time and change things up, that's why parts of her are still stuck there. But I don't know, in my head I like to think that her soul went to heaven and only her alternate timelines are still waiting in the lodge with Cooper.
Because there's no mention of the angels at all in the script, it was Phoebe Augustine, who plays Ronette Pulaski, who told Lynch, hey, you know, this is so bleak, this is so dark, can we have something happen that's can be interpreted as good? And that is why the angel appears for Ronette and she's let go. But then that carried over into Lynch's thinking with the Doc Hayward mentioning the angel picture in Laura's room, which is so prominent, with the angel disappearing and all that. And then finally the angel showing up in the Black Lodge. Obviously, this thing that Phoebe Augustine mentioned created something in Lynch's mind, because they started filming up in Snoqualmie, North Bend, and then they moved to Los Angeles. So after they shot the ending, then he was able to weave this angel motif through the rest of the film, wherever he felt like it. But it was her suggestion that caused him to create all this angel motif throughout the entire movie. So we have her to thank for that.
That is so cool.
I think the movie would be very, very different without that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
If it just ended with, if you go by the script, Laura was supposed to be sitting in Cooper's lap in the Black Lodge, and that was going to be the ending of the film. So,
I mean, even with the happy ending, the pain that the end of this movie causes me is insurmountable. It really is.
Well, Cameron, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for doing this with me, and I do hope that we can collab again in the future. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cameron. It's so good to go on and on and on and on about every harebrained theory that we have. And I think we could both go on and talk about this for hours. So it's been a delight.
If you have not subscribed to Camcorder Cameron's YouTube channel, you really should. She makes incredible videos, a lot of great David Lynch, Twin Peaks deep dives. She just did one about Mulholland Drive. It's fantastic. So make sure you sub to her. And if you are seeing this on her channel and you have not discovered this channel, please subscribe to the O&A David Lynch World's YouTube channel. So thank you so much.
Obnoxious and anonymous.
Yes.
Which you are neither.
Anyway, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Really appreciate it. Give our videos a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channels if you haven't already. All right. We will see you soon. Take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye.